Hey guys, this is Grandmaster Max Illingworth, and in this video I will show you how to attack Black's king in the French defense. So in our game here, it started with e4, e6, d4, d5. I consider knight c3 to be the best option for white against the French defense, against which Black might have played the winnower with bishop to b4, or the classical with knight f6, which was played in the game. White pinned the knight with bishop g5, focusing on the d5 pawn. I find the most common move in junior chess is the move bishop to e7, whereas you might see d takes e4 more often in higher level play. After bishop e7, I want to share with you a really exciting gambit that I think sets all kinds of problems for Black. After e5 and knight f to d7, a really nice idea for white is h4, the Alekhine-Chatard Attack. And the point of this opening can be seen in our game, where after bishop takes g5, accepting the pawn sacrifice, queen takes g5, that white gets a nice h-file for the attack, and can gain some time attacking the black queen with moves such as knight to h3. However, I found a nice weapon recently that I think is even more promising than these old-fashioned approaches of queen d3 and knight h3 that have generally been seen before. I like the idea of playing knight to b5 in this position. The reason is that either black plays knight a6 and they can't really get rid of our knight on b5 without allowing the knight to come to d6, or if black plays queen d8 as in the game, then we have a nice move to start creating some threats on the black king side. What do you think would be a good move for white here? And whenever I ask a question, you may like to pause the video to think about it before continuing to see what move was played. So well done if you found the move queen to g4, attacking that g7 pawn. And black doesn't have a very convenient way to defend against this threat, because if black does play g6, which may be his best move here, we can go knight f3 and we'll just have a very natural attack, moves such as queenside castling. And when black does play the typical c5 break eventually, such as after a6, knight c3, and c5, we can play d takes c5 and open up the center to make use of our lead in development. Not to mention the h-file will give us very good attacking prospects in the long term. Notice how hard it is for black's king to find a safe spot in this position. Speaking of which, let's see what happens in the game when black prematurely castled into the attack with castle's king side. It's very risky because of the fact that the rook is already on the h-file for the attack. So what might be a good move for white in this position? In the game, white played bishop to d3. It's a really nice idea to attack the pawn like this, since if black plays h6, well, the pawn on g7 is pinned to the king. So that means we can simply play rook h6 and regain our pawn with a devastating attack on the king side. And what if they play more solidly with g6? Well, we can still build up a very big attack on the h-file, as our game will show. So queen h3 is played. Black played h5 to cover the mate threat. And again, what move would you play as white in this position? So it might be quite natural to play moves such as g4, which was my first thought when I saw this game. However, black then play h4 in order to give back the pawn, to trade the queens and take some of the sting out of white's kingside attack. So rather than g4, we can aim for a different target against black's king, namely the move queen g3. It's a quiet move, but a very powerful move, because the g6 pawn is not so safe anymore. If black does try to defend it with king g7, we can play rook takes h5, and by focusing our efforts against the weak g6 pawn, I think white will have a decisive attack in this position. Instead, black tried the move king to h8, but that's already asking for trouble after white's next move. Do you see what white can play to continue the attack on black's king? Well done. Bishop takes g6 is a really powerful move here, threatening rook takes h5. Black's reply is forced, fg6. Queen takes g6. And already there's this rook h5 checkmate threat. And the only sensible way for black to deal with it is to play rook f5. And granted, white is quite spoiled for choice here, but I really like the way that he played it in the game, where he played rook takes h5, removing the last defender of black's king. So rook takes h5, queen h5. And after king g7, I have another nice puzzle for you. How might we bring more pieces into the attack against the black king? The queen itself won't be sufficient, so how might we add some more pieces into the attack? So you might have been thinking of playing moves such as knight f3 and trying to get the knight in the attack in this way. And granted, it's probably also winning for white, but particularly strong is the way white played it with queenside castling. The idea is not just to castle the king, but there's actually a more powerful idea as well. Note that black can't just move the queen to defend the king, because after queen h8, the knight on c7, knight on b5 could later take on c7 after first trading the queens. And then we'd be able to trap their rook in the corner. So black played a6 instead. But okay, do we have to defend against this threat of a takes b5? Well, it turns out the answer is no when we have a stronger threat available. So rook d3 was white's whole point, using what's known as a rook lift to jump the rook over the pawns and thus bring the rook in the attack. And this can be a really good attacking resource when we can't easily bring the rook to the open file, such as the h file, or if we don't have an open file available. So black played a takes b5. He doesn't really have a good way to bring the pieces to the defense because the e5 pawn is covering it, covering some key squares. After a takes b5, well, you can play the main sequence with me, rook g3, and white has mate in 2 in this position. So he plays queen to h8, king to e7, and then rook to g7 as checkmate. So that's how this game ended. Out of this, you now have a nice attacking system against the French defense with the Alekhine-Chatard Attack. But you also can see the dangers of castling the king into an attack. And we also saw how important it is to open up a file to the enemy king. We saw the value of this bishop g6 sack and ripping open the king position. We saw how the rook on d3 can come to d3 and lift to finish off the black king. We also saw how when you have extra space in the center, and that serves as a good foundation for a successful attack on the enemy king. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.